Hey, Sunshine, how are you? Oh, you changed your profile picture. Good evening, Matthew. How are you? I have two very good stories tonight, so I hope everybody enjoys them. Hello, Carrie. How are you? Songbird, welcome. Grandma, welcome. Hey, Jasmine, how are you doing? That's cool, though. Oh, thank you, Matthew. I appreciate that. So I think you guys are going to enjoy the two stories tonight. Not... Hey, Eddie, welcome in, brother. Beer guy, hello. We got a couple of good short stories tonight by two giants of the genre. Hey, Tina. Not so much scary, but definitely unsettling, which is almost better. Hey, CZ Wolf, how are you? Hey, Timothy, how are you? Wings, hello. Good to see you. Hey, Amy. Oh. Sarah, I didn't see you sneak in there. Or did I? Hey, Juliana, how are you? You snuck right in. How are you doing, Jules? Hello, music. Hello, Linda. That's what we're hoping. Molly should be coming home for Christmas. It's yeah, I can't wait to see her. I haven't seen her since the last time she was home. So, hey, crazy mama, welcome in. So, Jules, are you going to stick around and listen to the stories? Awesome. It's always good to have one of my bonus kids in the room. Hey, Jackie. Welcome in. We'll give it another minute here, and then we're going to start reading. How are my Storytime goblins this evening? Awesome. Welcome in, Angela. Yes, everybody celebrate that Sarah is here. Yay! We're happy you're back. Ah, Relatable Hair, how are you? UK in the house. Hey, Casey, how are you doing? I'm doing all right. Doing all right. Upright and mobile. Well, we're happy to have you back, Sarah. Hey, Tag 47, how are you? Welcome in. All right. Rita, how are you? Hey, Yane, welcome in. How are you? Hello, Tabitha. Welcome in. I think we're going to have a good crowd tonight. Woo! Upright and sniff in the air. My grandfather's favorite saying was always either upright and mobile, or as long as the ground is under my feet and not 6 feet over my head, I'm not doing too bad. Hey, Shay. Oh, it's your favorite show. Well, thank you. I'm glad it's your favorite show. Jackie, you are right on time. Oh, Savvy, welcome. I'm glad you found us. And stay for a couple of spooky stories, because that's what we do here. And yes, the vibe in this room is fantastic. Are you talking about the book on the cover on the screen? Because that's actually just my my logo. All right. Hey, Tessa. Yeah, my grandfather always used to say upright and mobile. Do you ever realize that, like, when people ask you how you're doing, you know, it's like passing and whatnot, and you actually tell them the truth, they stop asking you how you're doing? It's interesting. Well, Diamond, I'm actually going to be starting right now. Hello, Poof. The Storytime goblins are in the house. I don't know why I had to sing that. That was just weird. Savvy, it works every time. Hey, Hazmat, how are you? You tell them the truth, they won't ask anymore. Alrighty then. Well, let's get to it. I am in a strangely good mood today, and I don't know why. Considering the craziness, I'm like, yeah. You get me. Singing a paragraph. There's no singing in these stories this evening. All right. Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome back to Storytime with UndeadPapa. That's me. If you didn't know. Tonight, two ordinary machines with extraordinary consequences. A jukebox that offers something far more valuable than music, and a word processor with the power to rewrite reality itself. Sometimes the most dangerous things aren't monsters. They're the objects we invite into our everyday lives. So wherever you're listening from, dim the lights, sit back, and relax, because story time is about to begin. Our first story tonight, Juke-Box by Henry Kuttner. Jerry Foster told the bartender that nobody loved him. The bartender, with the experience of his trade, said that Jerry was mistaken, and how about another drink? "Why not?" said the unhappy Mr. Foster, examining the scanty contents of his wallet. "I'll take the daughter of the vine to spouse, nor heed the music of a distant drum. That's Omar." "Sure," the bartender said surprisingly. "But you want to look out you don't go out by the same door that you went in. No brawls allowed in here. This isn't East 5th, chum." "You may call me chum," Foster said, reverting to the main topic. But you don't mean it. I'm nobody's pal. Nobody loves me. What about that babe you brought in last night? Foster tested his drink. He was a good-looking youngish man with slick blonde hair and a rather hazy expression in his blue eyes. Betty? He murmured. Well, the fact is, a while ago I was down at that tom-tom with Betty, and this redhead came along. So I ditched Betty. Then the redhead iced me. Now I'm lonely, and everyone hates me. I meant to do that. I get so into it that I forget to change it. You shouldn't have ditched Betty, maybe, the bartender suggested. I'm fickle, Foster said, tears springing to his eyes. I can't help it. Women are my downfall. Give me another drink and tell me your name. Austin. Austin. Well, Austin, I'm nearly in trouble. Did you notice who won the 5th in Santa Anita yesterday? Pigs Trotters, wasn't it? Yes. Foster said, but I laid my dough right on the nose of White Flash. That's why I'm here. Sammy comes around to this joint now, doesn't he? That's right. I'm lucky, Foster said. I got the money to pay him. Sammy is a hard man when you don't pay off. I wouldn't know, the bartender said. Excuse me. He moved off to take care of a couple of vodka Collinses. So you hate me too, Foster said, and picking up his drink, wandered away from the bar. He was surprised to see Betty sitting alone in a booth, watching him. But he was not at all surprised to see that her blonde hair, her limpid eyes, her pink and white skin had lost all attraction for him. She bored him. Also, she was going to make a nuisance of herself. Foster ignored the girl and went further back to where a bulky, oblong object was glowing in polychromatic colors against the far wall. It was what the manufacturers insist on terming, holy cow, insist on terming an automatic phonograph, in spite of the more aptly descriptive word, Juke-Box. This was a lovely jukebox. It had lots of lights and colors. Moreover, it wasn't watching Foster, and it kept its mouth shut. Foster draped himself over the jukebox and patted its sleek sides. You're my girl, he announced. You're beautiful. I love you madly, do you hear? Madly. He could feel Betty's gaze on his back. He swigged his drink and smoothed the jukebox flanks, glibly protesting his sudden affection for the object. Once he glanced around. Betty was starting to get up. Foster hastily found a nickel in his pocket and slipped it into the coin lever. But before he could push it in, a stocky man wearing horn-rimmed glasses entered the bar, nodded at Foster, and moved quickly to a booth where a fat person in tweeds was sitting. There was a short consultation during which money changed hands, and the stocky man made a note in a small book he brought from his pocket. Foster took out his wallet. He had had trouble with Sammy before and wanted no more. The bookie was insistent on his pound of flesh. Foster counted his money, blinked, and counted it again, while his stomach fell several feet. Either he had been short-changed, or he had lost some dough. He was short. Sammy wouldn't like that. Forcing his fogged brain to think, Foster wondered how he could gain time. Sammy had already seen him. If he could duck out the back... It had become altogether too silent in the bar. He needed noise to cover his movements. He saw the nickel in the jukebox's coin lever and hastily pushed it in. Money began to spew out of the coin return slot. Foster got his hat under the slot almost instantly. Quarters, dimes, and nickels popped out in a never-ending stream. The jukebox broke into song. A needle scratched over the black disc. The torchy mourning of my man came out sadly. It covered the tinkling of the corns as they filled Foster's... covered the tinkling of the coins as they filled Foster's hat. After a while, the money stopped coming out of the jukebox. Foster stood there, thanking his personal gods as he saw Sammy moving toward him. The bookie glanced at Foster's hat and blinked. "Hi, Jerry. What gives?" "I hit a jackpot," Foster said. "Not on the jukebox?" "No, down at the Onyx," Foster said, naming a private club several blocks away. "Haven't you had a chance to get these changed into bills yet? Want to help me out?" "I'm no cash register," Sammy said. "I'll take mine in green." The jukebox stopped playing My Man and broke into Always. Foster put his jingling hat on top of the phonograph and counted out bills. He didn't have enough, but he made the balance up out of quarters he fished from the hat. "Thanks," Sammy said. "Too bad your nag didn't make it." With a love that's always true, always," the jukebox sang fervently. "Can't be helped," Foster said. "Maybe next time I'll hit him." "Want anything on Oaklawn?" "When the things you've planned need a helping hand." Foster had been leaning on the jukebox. On the last two words, a tingling little shock raced through him. Those particular two words jumped out of nothing, impinged on the surface of his brain, and sank indelibly like the stamp of a die. He couldn't hear anything else. They echoed and re-echoed. Helping hand," he said hazily. "Helping... A sleeper," Sammy said. "Okay, helping hand in the third, at Oaklawn. The usual?" The room started to turn around. Foster managed to nod. After a time, he discovered that Sammy was gone. He saw his drink on the jukebox next to his hat and swallowed the cool liquid in 3 quick gulps. Then he bent and stared into the cryptic innards of the automatic phonograph. "It can't be," he whispered. "I'm drunk, but not drunk enough. I need another shot." A quarter rolled out of the coin return slot, and Foster automatically caught it. "No," he gulped. "Oh." He stuffed his pockets with the booty from the hat, held on to his glass with the grip of a drowning man, and went toward the bar. On the way, he felt someone touch his sleeve. "Jerry," Betty said. "Please." He ignored her. He went on to the bar and ordered another drink. "Look, Austin," he said, "that jukebox you got back there, is it working all right?" Austin squeezed a lime. He didn't look up. "I don't hear any complaints." "But..." Austin slid a replenished glass toward Foster. "Excuse me," he said, and went to the other end of the bar. Foster stole a look at the jukebox. It sat against the wall, glowing enigmatically. "I don't exactly know what to think," he said to no one in particular. A record started playing. The jukebox sang throatily, "Leave us face it. We're in love." The truth was, Jerry Foster was feeling pretty low in those days. He was essentially a reactionary. So it was a mistake for him to have been born in an era of great change. He needed the feel of solid ground under his feet, and the ground wasn't so solid anymore, with what the newspaper headlines and new patterns for living emerging out of the vast technological and sociological changes of the mid-20th century offered. You've got to be elastic to survive in a changing culture. Back in his stable 20s, Foster would have got along beautifully. But now, in a word, he just wasn't on the ball. A man like that seeks a stable security as his ultimo, and security seemed to have vanished. The result was that Jerry Foster found himself out of a job, badly in debt, and drinking far more than he should have. The only real advantage to that setup was that alcohol buffered Foster's incredulity when he encountered the affectionate Juke-Box. Not that he remembered it the next morning. He didn't recall what had happened for a couple of days, till Sammy looked him up and gave him $900. The result of helping hand coming in under the wire at Oaklawn. The long shot had paid off surprisingly. Foster instantly went on a binge, finding himself eventually at a downtown bar he recognized. Austin was off duty, however, and Betty wasn't present tonight. So Foster, tanked to the gills, leaned his elbow on polished mahogany and stared around. Toward the back was the jukebox. He blinked at it, trying to remember. The jukebox began to play I'll Remember April. The whirling confusion of insobriety focused down to a small, clear, cold spot in Foster's brain. He started to tingle. His mouth formed words. Remember April. Remember April. All right, said a fat, unshaven, untidy man standing next to him. I heard you. What did you say? Remember April, Foster muttered quite automatically. The man spilled his drink. It isn't. It's March. Foster peered around dimly in search of a calendar. It's April 3rd, he affirmed presently. Why, I've got to get back then, said the fat man in desperation. He scrubbed at his sagging cheeks. April already? How long have I been tight? You don't know. It's your business to know. April. One more drink, then. He summoned the bartender. He was interrupted by the sudden appearance of a man with a hatchet. Foster, blearily eyeing the apparition, almost decided to get out in search of a quieter gin mill. This new figure bursting in from the street was a skinny blond man with wild eyes and the shakes. Before anyone could stop him, he had rushed the length of the room and lifted his hatchet threateningly above the jukebox. I can't stand it, he cried hysterically. You spiteful little... I'll fix you before you fix me. So saying, and ignoring the purposeful approach of the bartender, the blond man brought down his hatchet heavily on the jukebox. There was a blue crackle of flame, a tearing noise, and the blond man collapsed without a sound. Foster stayed where he was. There was a bottle on the bar near him, and he captured it. Rather dimly, he realized what was happening. An ambulance was summoned. A doctor said the blond man had been painfully shocked, but he was still alive. The jukebox had a smashed panel, but appeared uninjured otherwise. Austin came from somewhere and poured himself a shot from under the bar. Each man kills the thing he loves, Austin said to Foster. You're the guy who was quoting Audemars at me the other night, aren't you? What? Foster said. Austin nodded at the motionless figure being loaded on a stretcher. Funny business. That fella used to come in all the time just to play the jukebox. He was in love with the thing. Sat here by the hour listening to it. Of course, when I say he was in love with it, I'm merely using a figure of speech. Catch? Sure, Foster said. Then a couple of days ago, he blows up, crazy as a loon. I come in and find the guy on his knees in front of the jukebox, begging it to forgive him or something or other. I don't get it. Some people shouldn't drink, I guess. What's yours? The same, Foster said, watching the ambulance men carry the stretcher out of the bar. Just mild electric shock, an intern said. He'll be all right. The jukebox clicked, and a new record swung across. Something must have gone wrong with the amplification, for the song bellowed out with a deafening intensity. "Chloe!" screamed the jukebox urgently. "Chloe!" Deafened, fighting the feeling that this was hallucination, Foster found himself beside the jukebox. He clung to it against the mad billows of sound. He shook it, and the roaring subsided. "Chloe!" the jukebox sang softly and sweetly. There was confusion nearby, but Foster ignored it. He had been struck by an idea. He peered into the phonograph's innards through the glass pane. The record was slowing now, and as the needle lifted, Foster could read the title on the circular label. It said, "Springtime in the Rockies." The record hastily lifted itself and swung back to concealment among the others in the rack. Another black disc moved under the needle. It was Twilight in Turkey. But what the jukebox played, with great expression, was "We'll Always Be Sweethearts." After a while, the confusion died down. Austin came over, examined the phonograph, and made a note to get the broken panel replaced. Foster had entirely forgotten the fat, unshaven, untidy man till he heard an irritated voice behind him. "It can't be April." "What?" "You're a liar. It's still March." "Take a walk," said Foster, who was profoundly shaken, though he did not quite know why. The obvious reasons for his nervousness, he suspected, weren't the real ones. "You're a liar," I said. The fat man snarled, breathing heavily in Foster's face. "It's March. You'll either admit it's March or... But Foster had had enough. He pushed the fat man away and had taken 2 steps when a tingling shock raced through him, and the small, cold spot of clarity sprang into existence within his brain. The jukebox started to play "Accentuate the Positive, Eliminate the Negative." "It's March," the fat man yelped. "Isn't it March?" "Yes," said Foster thickly. "It's March." All that night the song title blazed in his mind. He went home with the fat man. He drank with the fat man. He agreed with the fat man. He never used a negative, and by morning he was surprised to find that the fat man had hired him as a songwriter for Summit Studios, simply because Foster didn't say no when he was asked whether he could write songs. "Good," the fat man said. "Now I'd better get home." "Oh, I am home, aren't I? Well, I gotta go to the studio tomorrow. We're starting a super musical April 2nd, and this is April, isn't it?" "Sure." "Let's get some sleep." "No, not that door. That's the swimming pool's out there. Here, I'll show you a spare bedroom. You're sleepy, aren't you?" "Yes," said Foster, who wasn't. But he slept nevertheless, and the next morning he found himself at Summit Studios with the fat man putting his signature on a contract. Nobody asked his qualifications. Taliaferro, the fat man, had okayed him. That was enough. He was given an office with a piano and a secretary and sat dazedly behind the desk for most of the day. He wondered how the devil it had all happened. At the commissary, however, he picked up some scraps of information. Taliaferro was a big shot, a very big shot. He had one idiosyncrasy. He didn't endure disagreement. Only yes-men were allowed around him. Those who worked for Taliaferro had to accentuate the positive, eliminate the negative. Foster got his assignment. A romantic love song for the new picture, a duet. Everyone took it for granted that Foster knew one note from another. He did, having studioed piano in his youth, but counterpoint and the mysteries of minor keys were far beyond him. That night he went back to the little downtown bar. It was just a hunch, but he thought the Juke-Box might be able to help him. Not that he really believed in such things, but at worst he would hoist a few shots and try to figure a way out. But the Juke-Box kept playing one song over and over. The odd thing was that nobody else heard that particular song. Foster discovered that quite by accident. To Austin's ears, the Juke-Box was going through an ordinary repertoire of modern popular stuff. After that, Foster listened more closely. The song was a haunting duet, plaintive and curiously tender. It had overtones in it that made Foster's spine tingle. "Who wrote that thing?" he asked Austin. "Wasn't it Hoagie Carmichael?" But they were talking at cross purposes. The Juke-Box suddenly sang, "I doed it," and then relapsed into the duet. "No," Austin said. "I guess it wasn't Hoagie. That's an old one. Dardanella?" But it wasn't Dardanella. Foster saw a piano at the back. He went to it and got out his notebook. First, he wrote down the lyrics. Then he tried to get the notes down, but they were beyond him, even with the piano as a guide. The best he could achieve was a sort of shorthand. His own voice was true and good, and he thought he might be able to sing the piece accurately if he could find someone to put down the notes for him. When he finished, he studied the Juke-Box more closely. The broken panel had been repaired. He patted the gadget in a friendly way and went away thinking hard. His secretary's name was Lois Kennedy. She came into his office the next day while Foster was tapping at the piano and helplessly endeavoring to write down the score. "Let me help you, Mr. Foster," she said competently, casting a practiced eye over the messy pages. No thanks," Foster said. "Are you bad on scores?" she asked as she smiled. "A lot of composers are that way. They play by ear, but they don't know G sharp from an A flat." "They don't, eh?" Foster murmured. The girl eyed him intently. "Suppose you run through it, and I'll mark down a rough scoring." Foster hit a few chords. "Phooey," he said at last, and picked up the lyrics. Those were readable anyway. He began to hum. "Swell," Lois said. "Just sing it. I'll catch the melody." Foster's voice was true, and he found it surprisingly easy to remember the love song that the Juke-Box had played. He sang it, and Lois presently played it on the piano, while Foster corrected and revised. At last he could tell what was wrong and what was right, and since Lois had studied music since her childhood, she had little difficulty in recording the song on paper. Afterwards she was enthusiastic. "It's swell," she said. "Something really new, Mr. Foster. You're good, and you're not lifting from Mozart either. I'll shoot this right over to the big boy. Usually it's smart not to be in too much of a hurry, but since this is your first job here, we'll chance it." Taliaferro liked the song. He made a few useless suggestions, which Foster, with Lois's aid, incorporated and sent down a list of what else was needed for the super musical. He also called a conclave of the songwriters to listen to Foster's opus. "I want you to hear what's good," Taliaferro told them. "This new find of mine is showing you up. I think we need new blood," he finished darkly, eyeing the wretched songwriters with ominous intensity. But Foster quaked in his boots. For all he knew, his song might have been plagiarized. He expected someone in the audience to spring up and shout, That find of yours swiped his song from Berlin, or Gershwin, or Porter, or Hammerstein, as the case might be. Nobody exposed him. The song was new. It established Foster as a double threat man, since he had done both melody and lyrics himself. He was a success. Every night he had his ritual. Alone, he visited a certain downtown bar. When necessary, the jukebox helped him with his songs. It seemed to know exactly what was needed. It asked little in return. It served him with the unquestioning fidelity of cigarette in Under Two Flags. And sometimes it played love songs aimed at Foster's ears and heart. It serenaded him. Sometimes, too, Foster thought he was going crazy. Weeks passed. Foster got all his assignments done at the little downtown bar and later whipped them into suitable shape with his secretary's assistance. He had begun to notice that she was a strikingly pretty girl with attractive eyes and lips. Lois seemed amenable, but so far Foster had held back from any definite commitment. He felt unsure of his new triumphs. But he blossomed like the rose. His bank account grew fat. He looked sleeker and drank much less, and he visited the downtown bar every night. Once he asked Austin about it. "That jukebox, where'd it come from?" "I don't know," Austin said. "It was here before I came." "Well, who puts new records in it?" "The company, I suppose." "Ever see him do it?" Austin thought. "Can't say I have. I guess the man comes around when the other bartender's on duty. It's got a new set of records on every day, though. That's good service." Foster made a note to ask the other bartender about it, but there was no time. For the next day, he kissed Lois Kennedy. That was a mistake. It was the booster charge. The next thing Jerry Foster knew, he was making the rounds with Lois, and it was after dark, and they were driving unsteadily along the Sunset Strip, discussing life and music. "I'm going places," Foster said, dodging an oddly ambulatory telephone pole. "We're going places." "Oh, honey," Lois said. Foster stopped the car and kissed her. "That calls for another drink," he remarked. "Is that a bar over there?" The night wore on. Foster hadn't realized he had been under a considerable strain. Now the lid was off. It was wonderful to have Lois in his arms, to kiss her, to feel her hair brushing his cheek. Everything became rosy. Through the rosy mist, he suddenly saw the face of Austin. "The same?" Austin inquired. Foster blinked. He was sitting in a booth with Lois beside him. He had his arm around the girl, and he had an idea he had just kissed her. "Austin," he said, "how long have we been here?" "About an hour. Don't you remember, Mr. Foster?" "Darling," Lois murmured, leaning heavily against her escort. Foster tried to think. It was difficult. Wow. It was difficult. "Lois," he finally said, "haven't I got another song to write?" "It'll keep." "No, that Torch song. Taliaferro wants it Friday." "It's 4 days away." "Now I'm here. I might as well get the song," Foster said with alcoholic insistence and stood up. "Kiss me," Lois murmured, leaning toward him. He obeyed, though he had a feeling that there was more important business to attend to. Then he stared around, located the jukebox, and went toward it. "Hello there," he said, patting the sleek, glowing sides. "I'm back. Drunk, too. But that's all right. Let's have that song." The jukebox was silent. Foster felt Lois touch his arm. "Come on back. We don't want music." Wait a minute, hon. Foster stared at the jukebox. Then he laughed. I know, he said, and pulled out a handful of change. He slid a nickel into the coin lever and pushed the lever hard. Nothing happened. Wonder what's wrong with it, Foster muttered. I'll need that song by Friday. He decided that there were a lot of things he didn't know about and ought to. The muteness of the jukebox puzzled him. All of a sudden, he remembered something that had happened weeks ago. The blond man who had attacked the jukebox with a hatchet and had only got shocked for his pains. The blond man he vaguely recalled used to spend hours and tete-a-tete with the jukebox. What a dope, Foster said thickly. Lois asked a question. I should have checked up before, he answered her. Maybe I can find... nothing. Lois, nothing. Nothing at all. Then he went after Austin. Austin gave him the blond man's name, and an hour later Foster found himself sitting by a white hospital bed looking down at the man's ravaged face under faded blond hair. Brashness, judicious tipping, and a statement that he was a relative had got him this far. Now he sat there and watched and felt questions die as they formed on his lips. When he finally mentioned the jukebox, it was easier. He simply sat and listened. They carried me out of the bar on a stretcher, the blond man said. Then a car skidded and came right at me. I didn't feel any pain. I still don't feel anything. The driver, she said she'd heard somebody shouting her name. Chloe. That startled her so much she lost control and hit me. You know who yelled Chloe, don't you? Foster thought back. There was a memory somewhere. The jukebox had begun to play Chloe, and the amplification had gone haywire, so the song had bellowed out thunderously for a short time. I'm paralyzed, the blond man said. I'm dying, too. I might as well. I think I'll be safer. She's vindictive and plenty smart. She? A spy. Maybe there's all sorts of gadgets masquerading as things we take for granted. I don't know. They substituted that jukebox for the original one. It's alive. No, not it. She. It's a she, all right. And who put her there? The blond man said in answer to Foster's question. Who are they? People from another world, another time? Martians? They want information about us, I'll bet. But they don't dare appear personally. They plant gadgets that we'll take for granted, like that jukebox, as to act as spies. Only this one got a little out of control. She's smarter than the others. He pushed himself up on the pillow, his eyes glaring at the little radio beside him. Even that, he whispered. Is that an ordinary regular radio, or is it one of their masquerading gadgets spying on us? He fell back. I began to understand quite a while ago, the man continued weakly. She put the ideas in my head. More than once. She pulled me out of a jam. Not now, though. She won't forgive me. Oh, she's feminine, all right. When I got on her bad side, I was sunk. She's smart for a jukebox. Mechanical brain, or I don't know. I'll never know now. I'll be dead soon, and that'll be all right with me. The nurse came in then, and the blind man refused to speak any more. Jerry Foster was coldly frightened, and he was drunk. Main Street was bright and roaring as he walked back, but by the time he made up his mind, it was after closing hour, and a chill silence went hand in hand with the darkness. The streetlights didn't help much. If I were sober, I wouldn't believe this, he mused, listening to his hollow footfalls on the pavement. But I do believe it. I've got to fix things up with that jukebox. Part of his mind guided him into an alley. Part of his mind told him to break a window, muffling the clash with his coat. And the same urgent, sober part of his mind guided him through a dark kitchen and a swinging door. Then he was in the bar. The booths were vacant. A faint, filtered light crept through the Venetian blinds, shielding the street windows. Against a wall stood the black, silent bulk of the jukebox. Silent and unresponsive. Even when Foster inserted a nickel, nothing happened. The electric cord was plugged into the socket, and he threw the activating switch. But that made no difference. Look, he said. I was drunk. Oh, this is crazy. It can't be happening. You're not alive. Are you alive? Did you put the finger on that guy I just saw in the hospital? Listen. It was dark and cold. Bottles glimmered against the mirror behind the bar. Foster went over and opened one. He poured the whiskey down his throat. After a while, it didn't seem so fantastic for him to be standing there arguing with a jukebox. So you're feminine, he said. I'll bring you flowers tomorrow. I'm really beginning to believe. Of course I believe. I can't write songs, not by myself. You gotta help me. I'll never look at another girl. He tilted the bottle again. You're just in the sulks, he said. You'll come out of it. You love me. You know you do. This is crazy. The bottle had mysteriously vanished. He went behind the bar to find another. Then, with the conviction that made him freeze motionless, he knew that there was someone else in the room. He was hidden in the shadows where he stood. Only his eyes moved as he looked toward the newcomers. There were two of them, and they were not human. They moved toward the jukebox in a rather indescribable fashion. One of them pulled out a small, shining cylinder from the jukebox's interior. Foster, sweat drying on his cheeks, could hear them thinking. Current report for the last 24 hours, Earth time. Put in a fresh recording cylinder. Change the records, too. Foster watched them change the records. Austin had said the discs were replaced daily, and the blond man dying in the hospital had said other things. It couldn't be real. The creatures he stared at could not exist. They blurred before his eyes. A human is here, one of them thought. He has seen us. We had better eliminate him. The blurry, inhuman figures came toward him. Foster, trying to scream, dodged around the end of the bar and ran toward the jukebox. He threw his arms around its unresponsive sides and gasped, Stop them! Don't let them kill me! He couldn't see the creatures now, but he knew that they were immediately behind him. The clarity of panic sharpened his vision. One title on the jukebox's list of records stood out vividly. He thrust his forefinger toward the black button beside the title of Love Me Forever. Something touched his shoulder and tightened, drawing him back. Lights flickered within the jukebox. A record swung out. The needle lowered into its black groove. The jukebox started to play. I'll be glad when you're dead, you rascal, you. What'd you guys think of that one? I love that. that's good stuff. Henry Kuttner doesn't get enough attention. Very prolific. Also wrote he wrote a couple of short stories that a couple of episodes of The Twilight Zone were based on. So, yes, don't date a jukebox. Note to self. Oh, Grandma D9, don't you worry. I got another story coming. Alrighty then. Well. Whew. You know what? When I initially read it, Yane, I thought the same thing. It's like the guy with the crazy hair. It was aliens. Casey, yeah, that was a thought the first time I read it too. This one I had never read before. It was in my catalog library, and it kind of fit the right theme, and it was good. Hey, Katie, welcome in. I am right in between stories, so you'll be able to hear the second one. Oh, hello over there on the tubes. Good evening from Nova Scotia. Hey, there's like 5 people watching over there. That's pretty cool. So I gotta do something here. Let's see where we're at. Yeah, just change it. Jeez. 19,571 followers. We're like standing on 20,000's doorstep. And I'm going to start knocking. Alrighty then. We can close out of that one. It's one of those things, CZ, where there's because like I have written a bit of stuff myself. I have a series of videos over on the tubes where it's a whole series called Whispered Legends, and I've written them all. And sometimes I sit back and I go, where did that come from? But yeah, somebody actually asked me once, they said, write a story about underground anarchist terrorist unicorns. And I did. Maybe one night I'll read it to you guys. It is messed up, but it is messed up in the best way. Yep. Anarchist terrorist unicorns. Maybe, well, we'll see. Maybe I'll bring it Friday. But the funny part of it is that it has now blossomed into, like, I have like the first 6 chapters of a book written, and I've got 2 other stories that are all tied to it. It's weird. All right, so we get the story at 20. You know what? That's not a bad idea, Tessa. I actually have something else planned for 20K. I was going to launch the merch store today, but I had a little bit of an issue that I needed to fix with it first. So that's going to be coming tomorrow. All right. Every 10,000. Yeah, I'd even do it at every 5. I challenge myself. I'm just glad you guys don't remember what we initially said I was going to do when I hit 20,000. Uh-oh. You gonna rat me out, Sarah? No, it wasn't singing. It was not singing. You won't say? Good, because I won't say either. All right. Okay. Well, let's keep going. Eddie. Oh, Eddie just threw me under the bus. Except you all will be watching, and that frightens me. I don't dance, and there's a reason for that. See, being a man of size, I fear that if I start dancing, I will build up enough inertia that I might actually throw myself through a wall. No, no, I can't get near a FIFA game. What are you talking about? All right. Well, let's move on to the next story. Jack Black is also very wealthy and a lot funnier than I am. Slam dancing. Nice. All right. So, and now we move from a machine that grants impossible wishes to one that can change the past with the touch of a key. Sometimes the greatest temptation isn't power itself, but the chance to undo our deepest regrets. Our next story is Word Processor of the Gods by Stephen King. I clicked. You guys didn't have to say anything. So welcome to all the new people. All right. Thank you. Like, get a pat on the back. I'm just waiting for the day somebody goes, "Good boy, Papa." Somebody the other day came in here. I don't know if you guys saw it. Somebody came in the other day and said, "Hey, Daddy," and I'm going, "No, no, don't call me that. This is not that kind of stream." Tessa will do it. All right. Word Processor of the Gods. Awesome. Thank you, Eddie. I appreciate it. At first glance, it looked like a Wang word processor. It had a Wang keyboard and a Wang casing. It was only on second glance that Richard Hagstrom saw that the casing had been split open. And not gently, either. It looked to him as if the job had been done with a hacksaw blade. To admit a slightly larger IBM cathode tube. The archive discs which had come with this old mongrel were not floppy at all. They were as hard as the 45s Richard had listened to as a kid. Oh, Tessa. Oh, Tessa. I have a thought, but it's going to stay inside where it belongs. It's a good thing my blush doesn't show up on camera. What in the name of God is that? Lena asked as he and Mr. Nordhoff lugged it over to his study piece by piece. Mr. Nordhoff had lived next door to Richard Hagstrom's brother's family, Roger, Belinda, and their boy Jonathan. "Something John built," Richard said. "Meant for me to have it." Mr. Nordhoff says, "It looks like it's a word processor." "Oh, yeah," Nordhoff said. He would not see his 60s again, and he was badly out of breath. "That's what he said it was, the poor kid. Think we could get it down for a minute?" "You bet," Richard said. and then called to his son Seth, who was tooling odd atonal chords out of his Fender guitar downstairs. The room Richard had envisioned as a family room when he had first paneled it had become his son's rehearsal hall instead. "Seth!" he yelled. "Come give us a hand!" Downstairs, Seth just went on warping chords out of the Fender. Richard looked at Mr. Nordhoff and shrugged. Ashamed and unable to hide it, Nordhoff shrugged back as if to say, "Kids, who expects anything better from them these days?" Except they both knew that John, poor doomed John Hagstrom, his crazy brother's son, had been better. "You were good to help me with this," Richard said. Nordhoff shrugged. "What else has an old man got to do with his time? And I guess it was the least I could do for Johnny. He used to cut my lawn gratis, you know. I wanted to pay him, but the kid wouldn't take it. He was quite a boy." Nordhoff was still out of breath. "Do you think I could have a glass of water, Mr. Hagstrom?" "You bet." He got it himself when his wife didn't move from the kitchen table where she was reading a bodice ripper paperback and eating a Twinkie. "Seth!" he yelled again. "Come on up here and help us, okay?" But Seth just went on playing muffled and rather sour bar chords on the Fender for which Richard was still paying. He invited Nordhoff to stay for supper, but Nordhoff refused politely. Richard nodded, embarrassed again, but perhaps hiding it a little better this time. What's a nice guy like you doing with a family like that? His friend Bernie Epstein had asked him once, and Richard had only been able to shake his head, feeling the same dull embarrassment he was feeling now. He was a nice guy, and yet somehow this was what he had come out with. An overweight, sullen wife who felt cheated out of the good things in life, who felt that she had backed the losing horse, but who would never come right out and say so. And an uncommunicative 15-year-old son who was doing marginal work in the same school where Richard taught. A son who played weird chords on the guitar noon and night, mostly night, and who seemed to think that would somehow be enough to get him through. "Well, what about a beer?" Richard asked. He was reluctant to let Nordhoff go. He wanted to hear more about John. "A beer would taste awful good," Nordhoff said, and Richard nodded gratefully. "Fine," he said, and went back to get them a couple of buds. His study was in a small shed-like building that stood apart from the house. Like the family room, he had fixed it up himself, but unlike the family room, this was a place he thought of as his own. A place where he could shut out the stranger he had married and the stranger she had given birth to. Lena did not, of course, approve of him having his own place, but she had not been able to stop it. It was one of the few little victories he had managed over her. He supposed that in a way she had backed a losing horse. When they had gotten married 16 years before, they had both believed he would write wonderful, lucrative novels, and that they would both soon be driving around in Mercedes-Benzes. But the one novel he had published had not been lucrative, and the critics had been quick to point out that it wasn't very wonderful either. Lena had seen things critics' way, and that had been the beginning of their drifting apart. So the high school teaching job, which both of them had seen as only a stepping stone on their way to fame, glory, and riches, had now been their major source of income for the last 15 years. One hell of a long stepping stone, he sometimes thought. But he had never quite let go of his dream. He wrote short stories and the occasional article. He was a member in good standing of the Authors Guild. He brought in about $5,000 in additional income with his typewriter each year. And no matter how much Lena might grouse about it, that rated him his own study. especially since you refuse to work. "You got a nice place here," Nordhoff said, looking around the small room with the mixture of old-fashioned prints on the walls. The mongrel word processor sat on the desk with the CPU tucked underneath. Richard's old Olivetti Electric had been put aside for the time being on top of one of the filing cabinets. "It serves its purpose," Richard said. He nodded at the word processor. "You don't suppose that thing really works, do you? John was only 14. "Looks funny, doesn't it?" "Sure does," Richard agreed. Nordhoff laughed. "You don't know the half of it," he said. "I peeked down into the back of the video unit. Some of the wires are stamped IBM, and some are stamped Radio Shack. And there's most of a Western Electric telephone in there. And believe it or not, there's a small motor from a director set." He sipped his beer and said in a kind of afterthought, 15. He just turned 15. A couple of days before the accident." He paused and said it again, looking down at his bottle of beer. 15. He didn't say it loudly. "A Rector set." Richard blinked at the old man. "That's right. A Rector set puts out an electric model kit. John had one of them, since he was, maybe 6. Gave it to him for Christmas one year. He was crazy for gadgets even then. Any kind of gadget would do him. And did that little box of Rector set motors tickle him? I guess it did. He kept it for almost 10 years. Not many kids do that, Mr. Hagstrom." "No," Richard said, thinking of the boxes of Seth's toys he had lugged out over the years, discarded, forgotten, or wantonly broken. He glanced at the word processor. "It doesn't work, then?" "I wouldn't bet on that until you try it," Nordhoff said. "The kid was damn near an electrical genius." "That's sort of pushing it, I think. I know he was good with gadgets, and he won the state science fair when he was in the 6th grade. Competing against kids who were much older. High school seniors, some of them," Nordhoff said. Or that's what his mother said. "That's true. We were all really proud of him," which wasn't exactly true. Richard had been proud, and John's mother had been proud. The boy's father didn't give a shit at all. But science fair projects and building your very own hybrid word cruncher? He shrugged. Nordhoff set his beer down. "There was a kid back in the 50s, he said, who made an atom smasher out of 2 soup cans and about $5 worth of electrical equipment. John told me about that. And he said there was a kid out in some hick town in New Mexico who discovered tachyons, negative particles that are supposed to travel backwards through time, in 1954. A kid at Waterbury, Connecticut, 11 years old, who made a pipe bomb out of the celluloid he scrapped off the backs of decks of playing cards. He blew up in an empty doghouse with it. Kids are funny sometimes. The super smart ones in particular. You might be surprised. Maybe I will. He was a fine boy regardless. You loved him a little, didn't you?" "Mr. Hagstrom," Nordhoff said, "I loved him a lot. He was generally all right kid." And Richard thought how strange it was. His brother, who had been in utter shit since the age of 6, had gotten a fine woman and a fine, bright son. He himself, who had always tried to be gentle and good, whatever good meant in this crazy world, had married Lena, who had developed into a silent, piggy woman and had gotten Seth by her. Looking at Nordhoff's honest, tired face, he found himself wondering exactly how that had happened, and how much of it had been his own fault, a natural result of his own quiet weakness. "Yeah," Richard said. "He wasn't he?" "Wouldn't surprise me if it worked," Nordhoff said. "Wouldn't surprise me at all." After Nordhoff had gone, Richard Hagstrom plugged the word processor in and turned it on. There was a hum, and he waited to see if the letters IBM would come up on the face of the screen. They did not. Instead, eerily like a voice from the grave, these words swam up, green ghosts from the darkness. Happy birthday, Uncle Richard. John. Christ, Richard whispered, sitting down hard. The accident that had killed his brother, his wife, and their son had happened 2 weeks before. They had been coming back from some sort of day trip, and Roger had been drunk. Being drunk was a perfectly ordinary occurrence in the life of Roger Hagstrom. By this time his luck had simply run out, and he had driven his dusty old van off the edge of a 90-foot drop. It had crashed and burned. John was 14. No, 15. Just turned 15 a couple of days before the accident, the old man said. Another 3 years, and he would have gotten free of that hulking, stupid bear. His birthday and mine coming up soon. A week from today, the word processor had been John's birthday present for him. That made it worse somehow. Richard could not have said precisely how or why, but it did. He reached out to turn off the screen and then withdrew his hand. Some kid made an atom smasher out of 2 soup cans and $5 worth of auto-electrical parts. Yeah, the New York City sewer system is full of alligators, and the U.S. Air Force has the body of an alien on ice somewhere in Nebraska. Tell me a few more. It's bullshit. But maybe that's something I don't want to know for sure. He got up and went around the back of the VDT and looked through the slots. Yes, it was as Nordhoff had said. Wires stamped Radio Shack made in Taiwan, wires stamped Western Electric and Westrax, and Erector set with a little circled trademark. And he saw something else. Something Nordhoff had either missed or hadn't wanted to mention. There was a Lionel train transformer in there, wired up like the Bride of Frankenstein. Christ, he said, laughing but suddenly near tears. Christ, Johnny, what did you think you were doing? But he knew that too. He had dreamed and talked about owning a word processor for years, and when Linda's laughter became too sarcastic to bear, he had talked about it to John. I could write faster, rewrite faster, and submit more, he remembered telling John last summer. The boy had looked at him seriously. His light blue eyes were intelligent, but always so carefully wary, magnified behind his glasses. It would be great, really great. Then why don't you get one, Uncle Rich? Well, they don't exactly give them away, Richard had said, smiling. The Radio Shack model starts at about $3,000. From there, you can work yourself up into the $18,000 range. Well, maybe I'll build you one sometime, John had said. Maybe you will, Richard had said, clapping him on the back, and until Nordhoff had called, he had thought no more about it. Wires from hobby shop electrical models, Lionel train transformer. Christ. He went around the front again, meaning to turn it off, as if to actually try to write something on it, and fail would somehow defile what his earnest, fragile, doomed nephew had intended. Instead, he pushed the execute button on the board. A funny little chill scraped across his spine as he did it. Execute was a funny word to use when you thought of it. It wasn't a word to be associated with writing. It was a word he associated with gas chambers and electric chairs and perhaps with old dusty vans plunging off sides of roads. Execute. The CPU was humming louder than any he'd ever heard on the occasions when he had Windows-shopped word processors. It was, in fact, almost roaring. What's in the memory box, John? He wondered. Bed springs? Train transformers all in a row? Soup cans? He thought again of John's eyes, of his still and delicate face. Was it strange, maybe even sick, to be jealous of another man's son? But he should have been mine. I knew it, and I think he knew it too. And then there was Belinda, Roger's wife. Belinda, who wore sunglasses too often on cloudy days, the big ones, because those bruises around the eyes have a nasty way of spreading. But he looked at her sometimes, sitting there still and watchful in the loud umbrella of Roger's laughter, and he thought almost the exact same thing. She should have been mine. It was a terrifying thought because they had both known Belinda in high school and had both dated her. He and Roger had been 2 years apart in age, and Belinda had been perfectly between them, a year older than Richard and a year younger than Roger. Richard had actually been the first to date the girl who would grow up to become John's mother. Then Roger had stepped in. Roger, who was older and bigger. Roger, who always got what he wanted. Roger, who would hurt you if you tried to stand in his way. I got scared. And I led her away. Was it as simple as that? Dear God, help me. I think it was. I'd like to have it a different way, but perhaps it's not best not to lie to yourself about such things as cowardice and shame. And if those things were true, if Lena and Seth had somehow belonged with his no-good brother, and if Belinda and John had somehow belonged to him, what did that prove? And exactly how was a thinking person supposed to deal with such an absurdly balanced screw-up? Did you laugh? Did you scream? Did you shoot yourself for a yellow dog? Wouldn't surprise me if it worked. Wouldn't surprise me at all. Execute. His fingers moved swiftly over the keys. He looked at the screen and saw those letters floating green on the surface of the screen. My brother was a worthless drunk. They floated there, and Richard suddenly thought of a toy he had had when he was a kid. It was called a magic 8-ball. You asked it a question that could be answered yes or no, and then you turned the magic 8-ball over to see what it had to say on the subject. Its phony yet somehow entrancingly mysterious responses included such things as, "It is almost certain," "I wouldn't plan on it," and "Ask again later." Roger had been jealous of that toy, and finally, after bullying Richard into giving it to him one day, Roger had thrown it onto the sidewalk so hard, as hard as he could, breaking it. Then he had laughed. Sitting here now, listening to the strangely choppy roar from the CPU cabinet, John had jerry-rigged. Richard remembered how he had collapsed to the sidewalk, weeping, unable to believe his brother had done such a thing. Ball, baby, look at the baby ball," Roger had taunted him. "Wasn't nothing but a cheap, shitty toy anyway, Richie. Look at there, nothing but a bunch of little signs and a lot of water." "I'm telling," Richard had shrieked at the top of his lungs. His head felt hot. His sinuses were stuffed shut with tears of outrage. "I'm telling on you, Roger. I'm telling Mom." "You tell, and I'll break your arm," Roger said. And in his chilling grin, Richard had seen he meant it. He had not told. My brother was a worthless drunk. Well, weirdly put together or not, it screen printed. Whether it would store information in the CPU still remained to be seen, but John's mating of a Wang keyboard to an IBM screen had actually worked. Just coincidentally, it called up some pretty crappy memories. But he didn't suppose that was John's fault. He looked around his office, and his eyes happened to fix on the one picture in here that he hadn't picked, and didn't like. It was a studio portrait of Lena, her Christmas present to him 2 years ago. "I want you to hang it in your study," she had said. And so, of course, he had done just that. It was, he supposed, her way of keeping an eye on him even when she wasn't there. "Don't forget me, Richard. I'm here. Maybe I backed the wrong horse, but I'm still here, and you better remember it." The studio portrait with its unnatural tints went oddly with the amiable mixture of prints by Whistler, Homer, and N.C. Wyeth. Lena's eyes were half-lidded, the heavy Cupid's bow of her mouth composed in something that was not quite a smile. "Still here, Richard," her mouth said to him, "and don't you forget it." He typed, "My wife's photograph hangs on the west wall of my study." He looked at the words and liked them no more than he liked the picture itself. He punched the delete button. The words vanished. Now there was nothing at all on the screen but the steadily pulsing cursor. He looked up at the wall and saw that his wife's picture had also vanished. He sat there for a very long time. It felt that way, at least looking at the wall where the picture had been. What finally brought him out of his daze of utter unbelieving shock was the smell from the CPU, a smell he remembered from his childhood as clearly as he remembered the magic 8-ball Roger had broken because it wasn't his. The smell was essence of electric train transformer. When you smelled that, you were supposed to turn the thing off so it could cool down. And so he would, in a minute. He got up and walked over to the wall on legs which felt numb. He ran his fingers over the Armstrong paneling. The picture had been there. Yes, right here. But it was gone now. And the hook it had hung on was gone. There was no hole where he had screwed the hook into the paneling. Gone. The world abruptly went gray, and he staggered backwards, thinking dimly that he was going to faint. He held on grimly until the world swam back into focus. He looked from the blank place on the wall where Lena's picture had been to the word processor his dead nephew had cobbled together. "You might be surprised," he heard Nordhoff saying in his mind. "You might be surprised. You might be surprised. Oh, yes, if some kid in the 50s could discover particles that travel backwards through time, you might be surprised what your genius of a nephew could do with a bunch of discarded word processor elements and some wires and electrical components. You might be so surprised that you'll feel as if you're going insane." The transformer smell was richer, stronger now, and he could see wisps of smoke rising from the vents in the screen housing. The noise from the CPU was louder, too. It was time to turn it off. Smart as John had been, he apparently hadn't had time to work out all the bugs in the crazy thing. But had he known it would do this? Feeling like a figment of his own imagination, Richard sat down in front of the screen and typed, "My wife's picture is on the wall." He looked at this for a moment, looked back at the keyboard, and then hit the execute key. He looked at the wall. Lena's picture was back, right where it had always been. "Jesus," he whispered. "Jesus Christ." He rubbed a hand up his cheek, looked at the keyboard, blank now except for the cursor, and then typed, "My floor is bare." He then touched the insert button and typed, "Except for 12 $20 gold pieces in a small cotton sack." He pressed execute. He looked at the floor, where there was now a small white cotton sack with a drawstring top. Wells Fargo was stenciled on the bag in faded black ink. "Dear Jesus," he heard himself saying in a voice that wasn't his. "Dear Jesus, dear good Jesus." He might have gone on invoking the Savior's name for minutes or hours if the word processor had not started beeping at him steadily. Flashing across the top of the screen was the word overload. Richard turned off everything in a hurry and left his study as if all the devils of hell were after him. But before he went, he scooped up the small drawstring sack and put it in his pants pocket. When he called Nordhoff that evening, a cold November wind was playing tuneless bagpipes in the streets outside. Seth's group was downstairs murdering a Bob Seger tune. Lena was out at Our Lady of Perpetual Sorrows playing bingo. "Does the machine work?" Nordhoff said. "It works all right," Richard said. He reached into his pocket and brought out a coin. It was heavier than a Rolex watch. An eagle's stern profile was embossed on one side, along with the date 1871. "It works in ways you wouldn't believe." "I might," Nordhoff said evenly. "He was a very bright boy, and he loved you very much, Mr. Hagstrom. But be careful. A boy is only a boy, bright or otherwise, and love can be misdirected. You take my meaning." Richard didn't take his meaning at all. He felt hot and feverish. That day's paper had listed the current market price of gold at $514 an ounce. The coins had weighed out an average of 4.5 ounces each on his postal scale. At the current market rate, that added up to $27,756. And he guessed that was perhaps only a quarter of what he could realize for those coins if he sold them as coins. "Mr. Nordhoff, could you come over here now, tonight?" "No," Nordhoff said. "No, I don't think I want to do that, Mr. Hagstrom. I think this ought to stay between you and John. But just remember what I said. For Christ's sake, be careful." There was a small click, and Nordhoff was gone. He found himself out in his study again a half an hour later, looking at the word processor. He touched the on-off key, but didn't turn it on just yet. The second time Nordhoff said it, Richard had heard it. For Christ's sake, be careful. Yes. He would have to be careful. A machine that could do such a thing. How could a machine do such a thing? He had no idea. But in a way, that made the whole crazy thing easier to accept. He was an English teacher, and sometime writer, not a technician, and he had a long history of not understanding how things worked. Phonographs, gasoline engines, telephones, televisions, the flushing mechanism on his toilet. His life had been a history of understanding operations rather than principles. Was there any difference here? Except in degree? He turned the machine on. As before, it said, "Happy birthday, Uncle Richard, John." He pushed the execute, and the message from his nephew disappeared. This machine was not going to work for long, he thought suddenly. He felt sure that John must have still been working on it when he died, confident that there was time. Uncle Richard's birthday wasn't for 3 weeks, after all. But time had run out for John. And so this totally amazing word processor, which could apparently insert new things or delete old things from the real world, smelled like a frying train transformer and started to smoke after a few minutes. John hadn't had a chance to perfect it. He had been confident that there was time. But that was wrong. That was all wrong. Richard knew it. John's still, watchful face, the sober eyes behind the thick spectacles, there was no confidence there, no belief in the comforts of time. What was the word that had occurred to him earlier that day? Doomed. It wasn't just a good word for John, it was the right word. That sense of doom had hung about the boy so palpably that there had been times when Richard had wanted to hug him, to tell him to lighten up a little bit, that sometimes there were happy endings, and the good didn't always die young. Then he thought of Roger throwing his magic 8-ball at the sidewalk, throwing it just as hard as he could. He heard the plastic splinter and saw the 8-ball's magic fluid, just water after all, running down the sidewalk. And this picture merged with a picture of Roger's mongrel van, Hagstrom's wholesale deliveries written on the side, plunging over the side of some dusty, crumbling hill out in the country, hitting dead squat on its nose with a noise that was, like Roger himself, no big deal. He saw, although he didn't want to, the face of his brother's wife disintegrate into blood and bone. He saw John burning in the wreck, screaming, turning black. No confidence. No real hope. He had always exuded a sense of time running out, and in the end, he had turned out to be right. What does that mean? Richard muttered, looking at the blank screen. How would the magic 8-ball have answered that? Ask again later, outcome is murky, or perhaps it is certainly so. The noise coming from the CPU was getting louder again, and more quickly than this afternoon. Already he could smell the train transformer John had lodged into the machinery behind the screen getting hot. Magic Dream Machine. Word processor of the gods. Was that what it was? Was that what John had intended to give his uncle for his birthday? The space-age equivalent of a magic lamp or a wishing well? He heard the back door of the house bang open, and then the voices of Seth and the other members of Seth's band. The voices were too loud, too raucous. They had either been drinking or smoking dope. "Where's your old man, Seth?" he heard one of them ask. "Goofing off in his study like usual, I guess," Seth said. "I think he—" The wind rose again, then blurring the rest, not blurring their vicious tribal laughter. Richard sat listening to them, his head cocked a little to one side, and suddenly he typed, "My son is Seth Robert Hagstrom." His finger hovered over the delete button. "What are you doing?" his mind screamed at him. "Can you be serious? Do you intend to murder your own son?" "He must be doing something in there," one of the others said. "He's a goddamn dimwit," Seth answered. "You ask my mother sometime. She'll tell you he—" "I'm not going to murder him. I'm going to delete him." His fingers stabbed down on the button. "He never done nothing but—" The words, "My son is Seth Robert Hagstrom," vanished from the screen. Outside, Seth's words vanished with them. There was no sound out there now, but the cold November wind, blowing grim advertisements for winter. Richard turned off the word processor and went outside. The driveway was empty. The group's lead guitarist, Norm somebody, drove a monstrous and somewhat sinister old LTD station wagon in which the group carried their equipment to their infrequent gigs. It was not parked in their driveway now. Perhaps it was somewhere in the world, tooling down some highway or parked in the parking lot of some greasy hamburger joint. And Norm was also somewhere in the world, as was Davy, the bassist, whose eyes were frighteningly blank and who wore a safety pin dangling from one earlobe, as was the drummer, who had no front teeth. They were somewhere in the world, somewhere but not here, because Seth wasn't here. Seth had never been here. Seth had been deleted. "I have no son," Richard muttered. How many times had he read the melodramatic phrase in bad novels? 100? 200? It had never rung true to him, but here it was true. Now it was true. Oh, yes. The wind gusted, and Richard was suddenly seized by a vicious stomach cramp that doubled him over, gasping. He passed explosive wind. When the cramps passed, he walked into the house. The first thing he noticed was that Seth's ratty tennis shoes, he had 4 pairs of them, and refused to throw any of them out, were gone from the front hall. He went to the stairway banister and ran his thumb over a section of it. At age 10, old enough to know better, but Lena had refused to allow Richard to lay a hand on the boy in spite of that, Seth had carved his initials deeply into the wood of that banister, wood which Richard had labored over for almost one whole summer. He had sanded and filled and revarnished, but the ghost of those initials had remained. They were gone now. Upstairs, Seth's room was neat and clean and unlived in, dry and devoid of personality. It might as well have had a sign on the doorknob reading "Guest Room." Downstairs, and it was here that Richard lingered the longest, the snarls of wire were gone. The amplifiers and microphones were gone. The litter of tape recorder parts that Seth was always going to fix up were gone. He did not have John's hands or concentration. Instead, the room bore the deep, if not particularly pleasant, stamp of Lena's personality. Heavy, florid furniture and saccharine velvet tapestries, one depicting the Last Supper at which Christ looked like Wayne Newton, another showing a deer against the sunset Alaskan skyline. A glaring rug as bright as arterial blood. There was no longer the faintest sense that a boy named Seth Hagstrom had once inhabited this room. This room or any of the other rooms in the house. Richard was still standing at the foot of the stairs and looking around when he heard a car pull into the driveway. Lena, he thought, and felt a surge of almost frantic guilt. It's Lena, back from bingo, and what's she going to say when she sees that Seth is gone? What? Murderer, he heard her screaming. You murdered my boy. But he hadn't murdered Seth. I deleted him, he muttered, and went upstairs to meet her in the kitchen. Lena was fatter. He had sent a woman off to bingo who weighed 180 pounds or so. The woman who came back weighed at least 300, perhaps more. She had to twist slightly sideways to get in through the back door. Elephantine hips and thighs rippled in tidal motions beneath polyester slacks the color of overripe green olives. Her skin, merely sallow 3 hours ago, was now sickly and pale. Although he was no doctor, Richard thought he could read serious liver damage or incipient heart disease in that skin. Her heavy-lidded eyes regarded Richard with a steady, even contempt. She was carrying the frozen corpse of a huge turkey in one of her flabby hands and twisted and turned within its cellophane wrapper like the body of a bizarre suicide. What are you staring at, Richard? She asked. You, Lena. I'm staring at you because this is how you turned out in a world where we had no children. This is how you turned out in a world where there was no object for you to love, poisoned as your love might be. This is how Lena looks in a world where everything comes in and nothing at all goes out. You, Lena, that's what I'm staring at. You. That bird, Lena, he managed finally. That's one of the biggest damn turkeys I've ever seen. Well, don't just stand there looking at it, idiot. Help me with it. He took the turkey and put it on the counter, feeling the waves of cheerless cold. It sounded like a block of wood. Not there, she cried impatiently and gestured toward the pantry. It's not going to fit in there. Put it in the freezer. Sorry, he murmured. They had never had a freezer before. Never in the world where there had been a Seth. He took the turkey into the pantry where a long Amana freezer sat under cold white fluorescent tubes like a cold white coffin. He put it inside along with the cryogenically preserved corpses of other birds and beasts, and then went back into the kitchen. Lena had taken the jar of Reese's peanut butter cups from the cupboard and was eating them methodically one after the other. It was the Thanksgiving bingo, she said. We had it this week instead of next because next week Father Phillips has to go in the hospital and have his gallbladder out. I won the coverall. She smiled. A brown mixture of chocolate and peanut butter dripped and ran from her teeth. Lena, he said, are you ever sorry we never had children? She looked at him as if he had gone utterly crazy. What in the name of God would I want a rug monkey for? Rug monkey? That's a new one, she asked. She shoved the jar of peanut butter cups, now reduced by half, back into the cupboard. I'm going to bed. Are you coming? Or are you going back out there and moon over your typewriter some more? I'll just go out for a little while more, I think, he said. His voice was surprisingly steady. I won't be long. Does that gadget work? What? Then he understood, and he felt another flash of guilt. She knew about the word processor, of course she did. Seth's deletion had not affected Roger, and the track that Roger's family had been on, oh, no, it doesn't do anything. She nodded, satisfied. That nephew of yours had always in the clouds, just like you, Richard. If you weren't such a mouse, I'd wonder if maybe you'd been putting it in where you hadn't ought to have been putting it out about 15 years ago. She laughed, a coarse, surprisingly powerful laugh, the laugh of an aging, cynical bawd, and for a moment he almost leaped at her. Then he felt a smile surface on his own lips, a smile as thin and white and cold as the Amana freezer that had replaced Seth in this new track. I won't be long, he said. Just want to note down a few things. Why don't you write a Nobel Prize-winning short story or something? She asked indifferently. The hall floorboards creaked and muttered as she swayed her huge way toward the stairs. We still owe the optometrist for my reading glasses, and we're a payment behind on the Betamax. Why don't you make us some damn money? Well, Richard said, I don't know, Lena, but I've got some good ideas tonight. I really do. She turned to look at him, seeming about to say something sarcastic, something about how none of his good ideas had put them on Easy Street. But she had stuck with him anyway, and then didn't. Perhaps something about his smile deterred her. She went upstairs. Richard stood below, listening to her thundering tread. He could feel sweat on his forehead. He felt simultaneously sick and exhilarated. He turned and went back out to his study. This time, when he turned the unit on, the CPU did not hum or roar. It began to make an uneven, howling noise. That hot train transformer smell came almost immediately from the housing behind the screen, and as he pushed the execute button, erasing the Happy Birthday Uncle Richard message, the unit began to smoke. Not much time, he thought. No, that's not right. No time at all. John knew it, and now I know it too. The choices came down to two. Bring Seth back with the insert button. He was sure he could do it. It would be as easy as creating the Spanish doubloons had been. Or finish the job. The smell was getting thicker, more urgent. In a few moments, surely no more, the screen would start blinking its overload message. He typed, "My wife is Adelina Mabel Warren Hagstrom." He punched the delete button. He typed, "I am a man who lives alone." Now the words began to blink steadily in the upper right-hand corner over the screen. Overload, overload, overload. Please, please let me finish. Please, please, please. The smoke coming from the vents in the video cabinet was thicker and grayer now. He looked down at the screaming CPU and saw that smoke was also coming from its vents, and down in that smoke he could see a sullen red spark of fire. Magic 8-Ball, will I be healthy, wealthy, or wise, or will I live alone and perhaps kill myself in sorrow? Is there time enough? Cannot see now, try again later. Except there was no later. He struck the insert button and the screen went dark except for the constant overload message, which was now blinking at a frantic stuttery rate. He typed, "Except for my wife Belinda and my son Jonathan. Please, please." He hit the execute button. The screen went blank. For what seemed like ages, it remained blank except for overload, which was now blinking so fast except for a faint shadow, it seemed to remain constant, like a computer executing a closed loop of command. Something inside the CPU popped and sizzled, and Richard groaned. The green letters appeared on the screen, floating mystically on the black. I am a man who lives alone except for my wife Belinda and my son Jonathan. He hit the execute button twice. Now, he thought, now I will type all the bugs in this word processor were fully worked out before Mr. Nordhoff brought it over here. Or I'll type, I have ideas for at least 20 best-selling novels. Or I'll type, my family and I are going to live happily ever after. Or I'll type, but he typed nothing. His fingers hovered stupidly over the keys as he literally felt all the circuits in his brain jam up like cars gridlocked into the worst Manhattan traffic jam in the history of internal combustion. The screen suddenly filled up with the word overload, 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 overload. There was another pop, and then an explosion from the CPU. Flames belched out of the cabinet and then died away. Richard leaned back in his chair, shielding his face in case the screen should implode. It didn't. It only went dark. He sat there, looking at the darkness of the screen. Cannot tell for sure. Ask again later. Dad? He swiveled around in his chair, heart pounding so hard he felt that it might actually tear itself out of his chest. John stood there. John Hagstrom. And his face was the same, but somehow different. The difference was subtle, but noticeable. Perhaps, Richard thought, The difference was the difference in paternity between two brothers, or perhaps it was simply that wary, watching expression was gone from the eyes, slightly over magnified by thick spectacles. Wire rims now, he noticed, not the ugly industrial horn rims that Roger had always gotten the boy because they were $15 cheaper. Maybe it was something simpler. That look of doom was gone from the boy's eyes. "John," he said hoarsely, wondering if he had actually wanted something more than this. Had he? It seemed ridiculous, but he supposed he had. He supposed people always did. "John, it's you, isn't it?" "Who else would it be?" He nodded toward the word processor. "You didn't hurt yourself when that baby went to data heaven, did you?" Richard smiled. "No, I'm fine." John nodded. "I'm sorry it didn't work. I don't know whatever possessed me to use all those cruddy parts." He shook his head. "Honest to God, I don't. It's like I had to. Kids stuff." "Well," Richard said, joining his son and putting his arm around his shoulders, "you'll do better next time, maybe. Maybe, or I might try something else. That might be just as well. Mom said she had cocoa for you, or if you wanted it." "I do," Richard said. And the two of them walked together from the study to a house into which no frozen turkey won in a bingo coverall game had ever come. A cup of cocoa would go down just fine right now. "I'll cannibalize anything worth cannibalizing out of that thing tomorrow, and then take it to the dump," John said. Richard nodded. "Delete it from our lives," he said. And they went into the house, and the smell of hot cocoa, laughing together. Well, well, well. Oh, yeah. That's one of those things about that story is that it's like he gets his happy ending, but at what cost? It's almost like he is the hero and the villain of the same story. No, King never disappoints. Never. Yeah, it was a way he really takes you on a journey through the in that little bit of time, you know? It's good stuff. So I don't know what I am going to do for Saturday night. I haven't really decided yet. Or not Saturday, but Friday. My brain. You're on my TV. Awesome. I like being on the TV. I was actually on TV once when I was in high school. It was really just, we had this public access station, and the high school ran a news show. Yeah, I ended up getting involved in that, and yep, I got on TV. Good night, Tessa. Sleep well. You know, wrap yourself up in that blanket and sleep well. Oh boy. All right. So, but I do know what I will be doing Sunday night. That'll be fun. Yep. You can go over to the tubes and same username. I'll be over there. So Wednesday or Sunday, I can't keep straight what day it is. It's one of those things about not having a regular job that, like, some days I don't know what day it is. Oh, you're welcome, Pinup Pajama Party. I appreciate you being here. Let's see. Alrighty. So we got 8 minutes left. Anybody got any time for a Q&A if you want? Not that I'm interesting enough for you guys to want to actually ask me questions, but James Patterson. I don't know, Trista. You got an unhealthy obsession with James Patterson. Oh boy. Tell us about my name, my username. Um, it's actually really simple. Really simple. So one of the things that I've done in my life that I am the most proud of, um, is be a father. I have been a father for 20 years now. My oldest is 20. My youngest is 18. Um, and then the other part of my name, the undead, I'm a tad obsessed with zombies. So, yeah. So, hence Undead Papa. And it just stuck. It just works because it speaks to my personality. Oh, let's see. Sarah, I am narrating a book right now. I am actually a co narrator for the book. The book is called um, Where Darkness Blooms. It is a romantasy. Um, I cannot read it here. I can't read it. I can't like do a recording session either because, to be honest, some of it is rather dirty. It's fun, but you know. Um, favorite author of all time? Jeez. Honestly, I have to go with. Oh, Sarah, I absolutely will. Um, I probably have to go with Stephen King. Um, I don't think I've read a Stephen King story that I didn't like. And I personally think the Dark Tower series is an absolute masterpiece. Um, so yeah, I would have to go with Stephen King. But I mean, Philip K. Dick, Isaac Asimov, Arthur C. Clarke. Those are all way up there. H.P. Lovecraft, Edgar Allan Poe, Richard Matheson. They're all authors that I've read here. So but yeah, I love it. Let's see. Do I train my voice to be able to read for so long? Not really. Um, the biggest thing I got to do is stay hydrated. Um, I do like on the days that I have lives, I try to space out my recording. So I'll get up and I'll record in the morning for a few hours, and then I won't record for the rest of the day. Um, yeah, so I don't really train it as much. And then as I've done this more and done more audiobooks, that it's just like anything else, it exercises the muscle. Where darkness blooms. Yeah, I will let you know. You can listen to me say naughty things. Um, Probably not unless I do. I probably won't be Trista. I probably won't be signing it unless I do prints of like like say if I do a print of the Storytime poster. I would have to get them sent to me, and then I would sign them, and then I would hand them out. I would give them out. Um, but given that I'm going to be mostly doing like T-shirts and stickers and stuff, not really stuff that I'll be doing them on most likely on Redbubble, and I don't have that. They create and ship everything right from there. But fortunately, the stuff is good quality, so I can't complain. But no, I wouldn't be able to. If I do end up doing live shows in person, yeah, absolutely, and I'll have stuff with me for people to sign. Let's see what else we got here. Sarah, yes, when we do co-narrating, what generally will happen is that there's one person who is the primary narrator and another person who is the secondary narrator. Secondary narrator is me. Did I just lose my stream? What the hell? Ah, dang it. This freaking TikTok live studio. God damn it. YouTube is not responding. Everything's not responding. Crap.